new territory for several of us who have exceeded our Zoom capabilities and needed to move on to, as well as Instagram Live Story, and needed to move on to different frontiers. A big thanks to Jay, our wizard of Product Coalition, who has helped us figure this out. Jay recently did so it looks like we are live on the site, on the Proud Mary Australia website, on the live page, which we're ready to go and going to be using that in the future. We're live on YouTube, and I think we're about to be live on Instagram. Facebook is live as well. All right. Give it one more second here. But this is a technology called Restream that Jay turned us onto, and it allows people to do many different folks can be a part of a panel, an interview, a webinar. And first of all, it's free. So unlike Zoom, once you start to get to a certain threshold in Zoom with a webinar, you have to pay thousands of dollars. So we really wanted a way to share with the world the story of Maria. We had already hit our limit with the number of people you could do effectively on Instagram Live Stories. Mike's been doing a little bit of that from Proud Mary in Australia with some of our folks. And it looks like we are live on all the channels now. So give it one more second here. And again, the goal of this is to allow all the different channels to kind of look at one spot. And it looks like the numbers are ticking up. So everyone do a really quick check and say hello to confirm your audio works.
Hello.
Testing.
All right. It works. James, we looking good over there? James Fairbrash and Jay and Niall, all on traffic control. So before we get started, we are going to try and do our best to navigate the chat functions in this inside Live Studio, inside Facebook, inside Instagram comments. They should feed through to our overall chat. So if you have a pressing question, feel free to put it there. As things come up, we'll try and compartmentalize those questions for a little bit later in the session. And we'll definitely make space for that. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? So welcome everyone to Behold Bernardina, first ever live stream for Proud Mary, a Meet the Producer type format. We've done a few of these, but we are doing our first ever live stream of this kind of event. And welcome to Maria. Maria is from Cafe Pacas and a longtime producer and perennial partner for Proud Mary. And obviously we have Nolan Hurdy here, founder of Proud Mary, and Mike, the one and only Sullivan, our green coffee buyer based in Melbourne, and also normally would be out in the coffee fields alongside people like Maria, tending to next year's harvest. But given where we are, stranded in our apartments or in our spaces or in our smoky cities, we're going to do this a little differently. So welcome everyone. This is our Behold Bernardina live stream event, and our goal of this event was to just get together and celebrate this amazing coffee that we just released, the Bernardina, and we'll come to the story here in a minute. But many of you guys who follow our social channels and maybe subscribe to our newsletter know how excited we are about this coffee, or maybe have seen in years past how much we wanted to tell the story. And there's a lot to talk about. So really we just want to use this format to hear from Maria and engage in a conversation, one-way, two-way, three-way conversation about the Bernardina and the Pacas story, and then the relationship with Proud Mary. So one of the first things I might do is get started with a real top line, like, why are we even here? What's the point of this? And I think, you know, with the world going to different versions of hell in a handbasket, first of all, we thought we'd take a breath and take a minute to talk about something positive, and to talk about something that is grounds for celebration. And the Bernardina coffee is certainly that, and the Pacas family and the relationship that Proud Mary has with that is something to be celebrated. And generally that's a positive thing. But also, so is hearing from coffee producers. A lot of us drink coffee every single damn day. We ingest this brown liquid into our bodies, and we don't think twice about where it comes from and what we paid for it and all that stuff. But this coffee is one of the true exceptions to the rule, something that we should pause for and think about, not only what makes it special, but also the relationship and the people that are working behind it. So that's kind of why we're here. We wanted to do a kind of a meet the producer type format. It's been done a lot over the years, and in my opinion, it's kind of, we've gotten away from that a little bit, and a lot of coffee companies have gotten really focused on what they're doing and selling their coffee, as all of us have. But it's time to, every now and then, you got to stop and say, what's it all for? And it's to support coffee producers and hopefully in turn get some of the best coffees that you possibly can. So none other, no better coffee to celebrate than the Bernardina. So Maria, maybe we'll start with you. Tell us your full name and where you're from and where you were born, and how you got into coffee farming and why you got into coffee farming.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Nolan. Hi, Mike, and everybody that's listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and for the opportunity that you're giving me to present this beautiful coffee that is Bernardina. My full name is Maria Pacas. I am from El Salvador, and my family has been growing coffee for 5 generations now. So I'm 5th generation of coffee producer. Coffee is like the most important part of our family. In every reunion that we have, everything revolves around coffee, and coffee is a big part of our lives and a big part of who we are. I am the commercial director in the company that is our family company. I am very lucky to be able to work with my family because it's not something easy to do. But as a Pacas family, we have been able to manage it. We have been working together for over 30 years now, and we hope to continue in the future to working together and creating these beautiful coffees. In El Salvador, coffee is super important. It provides a lot of jobs for many people. Coffee is also a source of well-being for the environment. So most of the coffees are grown under shade. So as you can see, El Salvador coffee is the lungs of our country. And as a company, as Café Pacas, we are blessed to be part of those lungs that form part of El Salvador's oxygen. And even though I was born in coffee, I didn't know that I was going to work in coffee, actually. It all happened because I had another job, and my father asked me, Maria, I need help in the promotion of the coffee, so would you be interested in helping me out? And I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. So I started working together with him. I started meeting clients, and this was in 2007, and this was when clients from other parts of the world started coming to El Salvador, started like not paying attention to what the news say about El Salvador being a very dangerous country, and they started like, okay, we want to go there, we want to see the country, so they started visiting us, and I started like creating these relationships with the people that visited us, and immediately I fell in love with the whole industry, not just the coffee farms, which have been in my life all the time, but with the whole coffee industry, with the people that visited us, with the histories that they told me about how they got into coffee, with their coffee shops, with the way they were cupping. I learned a lot about cupping through our clients. And then I had to make a decision because I had 2 jobs, I had 2 kids, I had 1 husband, so I had to make a decision. Okay, I have to give something up because I was going crazy with so many things on my plate. And I decided, okay, what I really love is coffee, so I'm going to put for sale the other business that I was working at. I sold it and I stayed working in coffee. And since then, it has been like a big love affair with this amazing product that brings so much good and so much wellness to not only to El Salvador and to my family, but to the whole world, I think.
That's really cool. And so that was 2007 that you basically jumped into coffee, 2007, 8. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was born in coffee, you know,
Yeah.
but I had never actually worked on it until then.
Yeah. 2007, I think for a lot of us 2007, 8 was when a lot of this stuff was really starting to take off. And I think it was also when people started roasting coffee and doing just really crazy things. I think one of the things that happened was here in the Northwest, we thought we were doing something interesting with roasting coffee and latte art, and third wave was starting. And then in Australia, they were like, yeah, we're doing that. Oh, and by the way, we're also doing this food thing. But I think in parallel universe, also we started to cultivate these relationships with producers, and producers started to get to kind of be turned on to a different market. So maybe really quickly from your perspective, and people like Aida Batle and others, and who were, you guys were early pioneers, particularly as female producers. Talk about what the last 13 years have what you've seen, what's changed, what do you see the biggest differences between 2007 and today?
Well, from a producer's perspective, there's been a lot of change and evolution from the moment when I started to now. There's definitely been a lot of change and evolution. First, I think the biggest change that I see as a producer is that as producers we are more concerned about learning about our own coffees. Okay, I remember the generation before me, they were only like selling coffee, like maybe not as a commodity, but not as this special product, and understanding all the flavors that you could find inside coffee. Like cupping coffees for a producer was non-existent when I started working in coffee. And actually that was one of the first things that we did at the mill. I told my father, okay, Dad, it's very important for me to understand the product that I'm selling. If I'm not able to describe the coffee that I am trying to sell to a client, it's very difficult for me, because they do understand it. They cup and they do feel if there's chocolate, if there's something wrong with the coffee. So there, it was like that. It didn't used to be like that. So one of the first things we did was that we created a lab inside the mill, which was non-existent back then. With time, many things started to happen. We started learning more about each coffee that we had. We started learning that there were differences between the same variety, if it was grown in one farm at one volcano versus in another farm at another volcano, if it was processed differently. We started doing a lot of experiments with the coffee processing and with coffee varietals as well. So all these experimentations take a lot of time. So we were lucky because we started early, and now we're seeing the results of all the experiments that we have done in the past. And now more and more producers are doing that. More and more producers are able to offer coffees that are different, coffees that are special, coffees that have been treated in a special way, hand-picked, etc. So the competition, for sure, is a lot more than what it used to be. So that is something good, because it helps you keep us on our toes, and it forces us to be creative and innovate all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the things that I'm hearing is that it's changed a lot. The quality is elevated, and the producers are aware of why you would want to elevate quality.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that I think we'll jump right into in a second, the story of Bernardina, because it's in terms of elevated, it's about as elevated as you can get these days. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your farm, just really quickly. How big is your farm? How many people work there? How many people are involved in the process?
Okay, so we see Café Pacas Matt, as a community, we don't have only one farm. We have a community, okay? And that community is made of, for example, our agronomic suppliers, of the people that work at the farms, of the people that work at the mill, of the people that work in admin, and of our clients as well. Our clients, our friends, they're part of our family and they're part of our community. So we view our organization more like that way, in that sense, like a community. And in our organization, we process a total of coffee that comes from a total of 19 different farms. Each of those 19 farms is unique and has its own characteristics, its own varietals, etc. So it's a lot of work, because of so many coffees that we have to monitor the traceability and the quality. So it's a lot of work that we put into preserving that quality that nature creates at the farm. And we have we have 2 seasons basically during the year in Café Pacas. We have the picking season, which starts late October, early November, and goes all the way up to March. During the picking season, the number of people that work with us at the farms and at the mill, it rises up to 900 or sometimes 950 people, depending on how much coffee we have at the farm. And then we have the maintenance period, which goes from April to when the picking season starts, which is October. And in that time, that number, it maybe drops to 500 people, more or less. So there's a lot of families, a lot of people that depend on the coffee to make a living and to subsist.
That's helpful. That's good context and a reminder that it's not just farms, it's communities and all the people that support farms. So I'm going to open this up to a kind of a question for the two of you guys. And how did this Bernardina thing, I mean, assume that maybe some people saw the video where Nolan talked about the story, but like maybe assume they didn't. And how did this whole thing get started?
Well, let me kick this off a little bit, Maria, because I feel like just summing up some of the things that you just spoke about then really speaks to how you unearthed Bernardina in the first place. And first of all, really focusing on the quality and trying to find special coffees. That is just something that you've been working on for a long time, and it's like really could feel how heartfelt that is. And I can remember the level of detail that you'd go to in all your farms and the stories that would come from them in terms of different tablones and named after different children or friends or whatever else, and kind of like trying to analyze and understand every little section of the farm to what is working, what's not working, how do we improve it, how do we fix it, how do we manage it, all of these things. And I guess that also has led to like how we've worked in terms of trying to move away from a fluctuating price point to just working on a quality base, which is really ultimately trying to raise the price for coffee for everyone, not just special things. But I can remember getting an email from you, Maria, and in the email you were very excited, saying that you just purchased a new farm, and the farm itself was 100% Bourbon, but you think that maybe you had found some geisha on the farm. And I was also so excited to get that email, because at that time I don't think either of us had seen geisha in El Salvador. It just wasn't around. And so the idea of tasting geisha from El Salvador was just so exciting. And of course, I'm like, well, Maria, send us a sample. And the sample arrived, and I looked at it, and we all took a look, and it was like, well, doesn't quite look like geisha. It looks a little different. And then we roasted it, and we cupped it, and it was just like, oh, holy shit! Straight on the computer, Maria, I think you found geisha. This is so floral and fragrant, and so much vanilla and cream, and really a delicate coffee. Like honestly, never seen anything like it from El Salvador before. It really took that butterscotch toffee profile that we know from El Salvador and just really lifted it into something so unique. And that was a really amazing moment. And it kind of, I think the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, but there wasn't a lot of coffee from the first discovery of it, and we were talking about 3 to 5 trees at the time.
Yeah, it's it's amazing how stars align in order for things to happen, and it really amazes me because I remember on a trip that when Nolan came to El Salvador, there are 2 roads to get to the mill. We have a road that takes you like 20 minutes to get there, and then there's another one that takes you like an hour to get there. So the short road was being fixed, so we had to take the long road, and that gave us like a big opportunity to be able to have this conversation about what his ideas was, what type of coffee he liked, and what mind-blowing coffee was to him. So I learned a lot from Nolan because he was like super open to share his thoughts and everything. So that really, he left me like with this idea, or with this picture of him. Okay, so he's this very progressive coffee roaster, and he will try new things. He will not say no to new things. So when we tasted Bernardina for the first time, and we discovered that it was something super different from the rest of the coffees that we had, the first person that came to my mind was Nolan because of that conversation.
Well, yeah, I remember that conversation too, Maria.
Well,
yeah.
I have a question. So maybe on the behalf of some of the people who might be out there on the other end of this, and first of all, what is Bernardina? We probably should back up. And what is, in relation to, you mentioned geisha. So at the time, I'm assuming that it's like, that you had something special, or there was these 5 trees and you didn't really know what was going on with them, or
let me field this bit, because I feel like there's a couple of things here. One is Maria. It had a lot to do with Maria, really, with the new farm, separating into different tablones, and Maria's explaining to me on this car ride, in this conversation, that the farm manager that was still working on the farm for years had been saying to the previous owners, hey, look, there's these 3 to 5 trees. They ripen at a different time. Doesn't look like bourbon. Doesn't smell like it. Doesn't taste like it. It's something else. And the previous owner just didn't really seem to pay attention and wasn't really that interested. It was just like, hey, just get the job done.
But getting the job done meant you mixed that
right
in with other
the first thing that the Pacas family did was to separate everything out. And I remember Maria telling me the story of the first time that they ever pulped the cherries on the 5 trees, that the aroma of this peach and floral and mango aroma just wafting through the miles away, that the pickers came wandering back. So what is that? What's going on?
Is that true, Maria? Could people really smell this from a long way away?
No, it
wasn't. The fruit from picking really?
When they pulp the cherry, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was the night of December 12th. I will never forget that night, because that night was so special. It was December 16, 2013, actually. And we brought in a basket full of cherries, and at night to the mill, and it was such a small quantity that we had to use a hand pulper to pulp those cherries. We start pulping those cherries, and then these wonderful smells start coming out, and everyone that was at the patios was like, what are you doing? What are you doing there? Because of the smell. Even the truck driver, who wasn't a coffee person, who wasn't working at the mill, he was like outsourced. He was like, what's going on there? What's that smell? So that amount of smell and that amount of special is Bernardina.
That's very cool.
Mm.
And so Maria and Mike and Nolan chime in, but I think one of the questions that might be on people's mind is, so what? Like, so this coffee is really special. You know, why should I care, or what makes it? You know, and some people have heard about geisha. So you thought of this coffee and you said we're gonna pay a lot of money for it because it tastes great, because it's
So that same day, conversation in the car, Maria's explaining to me just how hard a position it was to be a coffee producer in El Salvador at the time, and it was not getting any easier. And she also said to me in the conversation in the car, "Look, Nolan, this geisha that we found, I would really love you to have it. It'd be really an honor for you to have it." And I was like, "Hey, Maria, it would be an honor for us to have this coffee, and I'd love to showcase it the best that we can and really introduce it to the world." And we went straight to the lab and we cupped through 15 or so different coffees. And as soon as we cupped and hit the Bernardina, it was just so fragrant and so floral and creamy. And it took me straight to Panama geisha. And I can remember at the time, Maria saying, "Look, Nolan, there's only I think it was 18 kilos back then, Maria. It wasn't a lot." And Maria was like, "Well, Nolan, great, this is your coffee, but what would you like to pay for it now?" And that was just how honest always our conversations were. And I, in my mind, was thinking, well, we would in those days were paying $3 to $4 a pound for a lot of those coffees. And so I was thinking, you know, $5 a pound is probably like, probably going to make, maybe Maria will be happy with that. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, Melbourne at the time, we were really pushing the boundaries of what is the price of coffee worth. And we were selling geisha from Panama for $10 a cup. And there was absolutely no problems doing that because the coffee was so special and people were so interested in these amazing coffees. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, if we can sell Panama geisha for $10 a cup, this is just like Panama geisha. Let's pay for what it's worth. And I let Maria know, well, how's $25 a pound sound? And I think it probably sounded ridiculous at the time, and Maria's jaw dropped. But it felt really good for us to actually like celebrate this coffee and not really value it for something special and not undervalue it, which I feel often happens. And that's what's kind of led to this amazing story. However, we didn't know what it was. We thought it was geisha, or it could be geisha.
Maria, you thought it was geisha. You guys were like, "Oh yeah, that's geisha."
At that point, we thought it was a geisha. So right after we agreed on the price and everything with Nolan, what his immediate next step was, "Okay, Maria, so take me to the farm. I want to see the trees." So we drove to the farm, and when Nolan saw the trees, he was very knowledgeable in geisha because he had been to Panama many times in the past. When he saw the trees, he said, "Maria, I don't think this is a geisha." We had never seen a geisha tree before, and I'm not a botanist, so I wasn't able to like really identify the differences between a geisha tree and a bourbon back then. So actually Nolan recommended, "You should look into it because I don't think this tree is a geisha. It might be something different." Okay, so I went back and I spoke with my brother Alfredo, and we decided that we were going to test the variety for its DNA to make sure what it was, so that we could scientifically know what it was. So we sent a sample to a lab in Italy that is called Lab Analytica, and it was a simple process. We sent the sample of the coffee, and they took, I think it was like a month or a bit more maybe to get the results back. And when the results came back, it said that it was a variety that was not documented, and that it was not related to Bourbon or any other varieties documented within Central America, and that it had some like 15% link to a variety that is grown in the Agaro region of Ethiopia. So we had these amazing trees there at the farm. We had no idea how they got there, but we were able to discover them because of the farm manager that pointed them out to us.
Mm,
So
mm.
immediately,
So during
I
that
wrote
whole
an
month.
email.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So immediately, I write this email to Nolan because he had gotten the coffee, and I said, Nolan, this is not a geisha. This is a different varietal, and I still have that email because it was written like with a lot of enthusiasm and with a lot of joy that we had found something together. And when I say we, I refer to the farm manager, Nolan, and Pacas because he's part of this discovery as well. And so then we had to name this new baby that we had in our hands, and we decided to call it Bernardina because the farm manager's name, his second name is Ruperto Bernardino Merche. So we wanted to give him credit for his discovery, and that's what we did. That's how the name came to be.
And meanwhile, you were on the other end thinking it was geisha, but,
Yeah,
but you also like may not have been that excited. You were
No,
kind of like,
my jaw dropped as well. I read the email and that straight away was like, oh, Nolan, so we've had had this varietal analyzed, and it turns out it's not geisha. And I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean it's not geisha? And then to kind of like to realize that it didn't exist on the database for coffee, it cupped up like geisha. Those 5 trees that we were referring to were 75 years old. It seemed like at the time, Maria. The fact that they even survived and were not pulled, that they were in really good condition, it just was like the most amazing coffee story that I felt like I'd heard in a long time, if not ever.
And it is 75 years old. That's old. How old is a typical coffee tree before it's too old?
Oh, we have trees in our farms that were planted by my grandfather that are like more than 100 years old, and they're still in production.
That's very unusual. Though,
That's not normal, though.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really El Salvador, Maria, that really has a different technique with the pruning that allows that to happen, right? Typically, trees are pulled more at 25 years old.
Yeah.
So you guys found this. The Bernardina came alive. We bought it all. That was 2000. That was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Well, it's 2013.
Oh, so it's been
that Maria first.
First. So it was 2014 was the first year.
Around then, 2014, 2015, I feel like was the first time we bought it.
Yeah.
And so you have this,
Yeah.
And so Mike and Maria and Nolan, you have this coffee, and now you're like, now what do we do with it? Geisha is fetching really record prices because people know what geisha should be worth. They know that it's going to taste like bubble gum and fruit stripe gum, but now you have this varietal that people don't know. So how do you?
I mean, I think that's kind of almost where the idea of little packages came from, Mike. Right? Like we kind of
correct. Yep.
The first idea was to do a triple pack box, and we made a really special box to try and present it so that the consumer could see the Bourbon from the same farm, the Bourbon pea berry, and then we had the Bernardina, and it was so blindingly different. Same farm, but clearly this special coffee.
Yeah. Maria, what's your perspective on all this? Because by 2013, geisha had started to find its way to other farms and people had propagated it. Maybe it wasn't quite producing a lot of fruit yet, but it was out there. And then along comes this variety. So what did you think?
Well, I was super excited because it was not geisha, because I think that if it had been geisha, it would have been like a good news and everything, but discovering something new is something like, it changes your world and it changes your perspective, and it is very in line to the business model that we have at Café Pacas, where we're always seeking innovation and we're always seeking for new ways to improve and new ways to process coffee and to produce coffee. So it was like super, like I was telling you before, like the stars aligned in order for us to be able to discover this new variety. And also it gave us a lot of pride in the sense that it was a variety that was discovered in El Salvador, and by my family, because we have another variety. Well, the Pacas variety was also discovered by a member of my family who was my great grandfather. So it's like history was repeating itself, and I was like, oh wow, it's so cool that it's my generation that gets to experience again this discovery of this fantastic variety, of this
Your
amazing
great grandfather
gift.
discovered a variety. Okay,
Pacas varietal.
the Pacas varietal. Your great grandfather, just for
Nice.
clarification.
That
My
was in the
great-grand-
40s, Maria, was that? 1945?
Yeah, that was in the 40s.
Yeah.
And
El Salvador seems like it has a rich tradition in some of this. I know, like Aida Batle, you know, she talks about how Bourbon, her great grandfather was one of the first to plant Bourbon on the side of the road, and then it became a thing. And yeah, so that's really cool. And Pacas is kind of what you have become known for over the years, but obviously you've done a lot of different things since, correct?
yes, yes. As I tell you, Matt, we're constantly innovating, finding ways to do things differently, finding new ways to innovate, because we believe that through innovation is how we will improve and how we will be sustainable in time, and how the quality of life of our people and of our family will be sustainable with time, and how this beautiful crop that is coffee will continue existing. And that's one of the reasons why we enjoy working with Proud Mary so much, because they are they have like this same crazy and innovative mentality that we do. They have been like super important in our innovation projects that we have. Mike, every time he visits us, is always like bringing new ideas and pushing us to improve and to try new things, and we love that. So we love working with Proud Mary.
I think that's a good point, Matt and Maria and Knowles, in that we've seen sort of the evolution of Bernardina as well. Obviously, that presenting today the washed and the natural, but I think it was back in like 2016 where we sort of first unveiled new processing techniques with Bernardina. And as Maria said, we don't stop. We're trying to push the frontier of Bernardina. So we've also done multiple processes such as like honey, natural and anaerobic forms, and we've really seen this beautiful variety flourish in multiple characteristics, whether it's the citrus notes, the floral notes. We've even seen confectionery sort of notes coming from Bernardina. So the potential of Bernardina as well is getting pushed each year as well.
But maybe on that, maybe I could ask each of the three of you guys, where does all this go? Because one of the things that we've seen over the years is the price. You know, I'd say from 2007 to 2010, you had a hot moment where producers were really encouraged by particularly the third wave coffee movement in the States, and roasters paying for and getting interested in experimental and really cool varietals and all that stuff. And it seemed like it faded a little bit. And then producers might have been a little disenchanted, particularly with what people are paying or wanting to do that. And it feels like maybe we picked that back up, but where are we at? Especially with things like, at the same time, you know, you look at the last, all the top 10 finishers at Cup of Excellence this past year, 9 of them were different processes besides wash coffee. I'll start with Maria. What's your perspective on all of this experimentation that now is becoming maybe more the norm?
Well, I think that the coffee industry is constantly evolving, Matt, and you have to, us as coffee producers, we have to acknowledge that, and we have to be proactive and not reactive to that change that is constantly happening. And that is what we try to do at Café Pacas. And we try to do our best with that. So, for example, we have to reinvent ourselves constantly in order to stay competitive and in order to continue producing these amazing coffees and to continue selling them at good prices that helps us become sustainable. And one of one of the treasures, one of the most precious treasures that we have as a company is the relationships that we have built throughout time in Café Pacas. We are very blessed to have clients that are super loyal, that are supporting us all the way. And part of it is because we have always been very transparent with the way we produce coffee. And they have been able to evidence that during their visits and with the time that we have been working together. So I think that treasure that we have is something that plays in our favor, and that I am sure that even though things are constantly changing and that we have to change, that is like the basis that will help us move forward in this coffee business.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, you could probably share your experiences on this, but I feel like thanks to that relationship that Maria's referring to, and I feel like the trust that was given to us, Mike really had an opportunity to just go crazy with Alfredo, your brother, and the guys at the farm to really push the limits on what was possible with Bernardina, and with such a special coffee to allow us to explore that pretty cool opportunity, Mike. What do you think?
Absolutely. I remember one of my trips to El Salvador, and Marian and I were sitting down at lunchtime, and it was quite an organic conversation that kind of ensued, and we were talking about Bernardina, and we just went, well, we've done this sort of, representation of different varieties from different farms, and we did the Bourbon, the Peaberry, and Bernardina, and we went, well, there's power in processing, and how do we sort of promote and show Bernardina in a different limelight? So we just said, hey, let's do some honey over lunch. And we just went, cool, we'll do like 10 kilos of honey. And then we also went, well, we've got washed and a honey. What's next? Let's try some natural Bernardina as well. So that was one of the first years where we actually promoted, and we did a washed honey and natural showcase of the Bernardina, which was a really good representation in showing what processing can do to the variety. So tasting those side by side was pretty exciting, and something that Proud Mary and Café Pacas hadn't done. And again, it's sort of pushing that envelope and doing it together to see the potential results. And we sort of saw completely different characteristics in the Bernardina variety, which is really cool. I don't know, what were your thoughts, Maria, initially with the different processing, like when you first tasted the honey and the natural? What sort of like came to your mind, or what did you sort of feel?
Well, it was a bit scary to process Bernardina with the different methods, because we had no certainty of how the variety will react. So when we finished doing the processing and we were able to cup the coffees and the results were like, wow, super amazing, we were really excited, because the one of the advantages of Bernardina is that it expresses itself super well in the different processes that we have tried it. And that is something that not all coffee varieties do. There are some varieties that are super good when you wash them, but if you do them natural, they will taste awful, So it validates the fact that Bernardina is something super, super special.
What's your take, Maria? I'll start with you, but I'm the only American on this panel, and I'll come right out and say it that for years, natural process was kind of an ugly word in America, and a lot of that had to do with, there was a lot of crappy natural processed coffee out there, and most of that had to do with how poorly it was processed. But it seems like that's changed dramatically, and there's a lot of really amazing things happening. And obviously, Proud Mary has this reputation of cultivating that and trying to push the boundaries, as Mike mentioned. But what's your take on all this? Is natural and honey and anaerobic and all these more interesting, non-traditional, but are they soon to be traditional? Is this here to stay? What's your take on all that?
Well, from what I'm seeing, naturals are here to stay. I think as producers, we have been improving the way we process naturals with time. It's like when you're learning how to make a recipe. The first time you make it, the first time you bake a cake, for example, it will not taste as good. But as you keep practicing and practicing, eventually it will taste amazing. And it's the same thing when you start trying out a new process. You have to, we started out trying different varieties with the naturals. We started trying doing naturals in raised beds, in patios, with different thickness in the layers. And by trial and error, we learn how to do naturals properly. And with all the knowledge that we have gained in the past, we believe that we are able to master the natural process. And that is the same with other producers in other countries as well. That same thing has happened with the anaerobic, for example. First trials of the anaerobic was amazing, but the shelf life of the coffee dropped really quickly. So it's a process that we have to learn also. We have to understand the chemistry of the process, what happens in the bean, why it happens, how do we change it so that it can last for a longer time. So it's a matter of time, of investing a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of energy in mastering these new processes. And I think that they are very interesting, both for the roasters, for the consumers, and for the producers in our case.
Anaerobic, for those that don't know, simply means without oxygen. It's similar to carbonic maceration in wine, where unlike the normal airflow and water that typically involved in coffee fermentation, where they produce a certain set of sugars that you control, if you cut off the airflow, it introduces a whole different set of sugars. And when done really well, can result in a really interesting, very different cup. And lately, there's been a lot of emphasis on anaerobic. There's been a lot of early experiments, and now those are starting to turn into more reliable production processes and a lot of emphasis on anaerobic. So maybe Nolan and Mike, what's your perspective on all the processing and where all this stuff's going, and seeing that Cup of Excellence is winning?
And I think it's really interesting. I do think, just like Maria was speaking to, natural process being a learning curve. I think anaerobic absolutely is going through that learning curve right now, and looking at those different competitions that we mentioned, the Cup of Excellence and things like that. You do see a lot of experimenting showing up in competitions, and sometimes in a really amazing way, and sometimes just not so amazing way. And I think it's about now us actually, like Maria said, learning to understand what is happening instead of just experimenting, which is the natural kind of like first step. Now, how do we gain control over these steps? And how do, if you are going to bake a cake, why don't you use scales? Instead of eyeballing it, why don't you weigh it? Why don't we actually really dial in a recipe, get the time right, get the temperature right, and then you can really get control of things. And I think it's time for coffee to step up and to kind of grow up into that platform that is really dialing in and getting control over the variables. For a long time, it's been tradition, and this is what we've got, and these are our resources. And to be fair, not everyone has the best resources in the coffee realm to be able to get control. But where we can, we should absolutely implement those things so that we can really repeatably produce exceptional coffees.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. I think it's quite a challenging process. As we saw when we cupped within the mill at Cafe Pacas, that we were getting Bernardina scoring sometimes 88, 89 points. However, with anaerobic processing, we're getting coffees 90 plus. So there's definitely potential in this process. However, like Nolan did say, it's a very scientific process where you have to control temperature a lot. Time is a huge factor as well. And a lot of these variables obviously are in correlation with one another. So trying to obviously navigate this sort of tricky process, it's quite a skill. But through repetition, obviously noting these variables, we can sort of dissect and disseminate information.
How do you guys know if it's done well? How do you guys know if it's successful. From my end, I've been drinking this coffee. It tastes like cinnamon toast crunch cereal, and it's in the best way imaginable. But from like a buyer, a coffee cupper, or a producer's perspective, how do you know that something like anaerobic is working?
I think it's twofold. You can look at the data, number one, consistency of temperature and degrees, for example. So there's more the scientific side. But obviously, you're also looking, the end result's in the cup always. So when you're cupping it, you can kind of understand whether fermentation has been scorched or something along that process has not gone right, whether it's drying as well. So there is also a bit of background knowledge that is required, but the ultimate result's going to be in the cup for sure.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit. We're going to try and keep this around the hour mark, but I'd be remiss if I didn't want to, not to get all bummer on everyone, but we are in a pandemic, and it's affected everyone in the whole entire world. But those of us here in the States, obviously, we don't need to get into how it's affected daily life. But one of the things that we all do in daily life, at least 80 to 90% of us, is we drink coffee, and there's a lot more coffee being consumed at home. And one of the things we've seen is a lot more people buying coffee for home for obvious reasons. But when we drink this coffee, we don't really think about, again, as always, the people who produce it. So thank you for being here, Maria. But I mean, maybe you could talk about how COVID-19 has impacted your community and your daily life, and maybe the economics and some of the things that we don't hear about with coffee producers.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think it's very relevant to the time of history that we're living right now. I think it's something unprecedented that our grandchildren will read about when they go to school, for sure, and it's a topic that should be addressed. And in the case of El Salvador, we were quarantined on March 12th. That's when quarantine started for us. In the case of coffee, it was, since we are agriculture, we were not forced to shut down, because agriculture is a continuous business. You cannot tell the trees, okay, stop producing coffee, stop growing. You have to continue working. So agriculture was not locked down in El Salvador back then. So that was something very positive for us, because it allowed us to educate the people at the farms and at the mill into how to behave in this new reality. Okay, so very early on in the pandemic, we were able to talk to them about social distancing. We were able to have them, ask them to wear a mask. So they got used to this new reality earlier than other industries, and that has made it easier for them now that things are back to semi-normal, and that the economy in El Salvador is open now, or half open, I would say. That has made it a lot easier for them. As a company, we invested a lot of resources in educating people on the ways to prevent the virus, and it has proven to be super effective. In the whole company, in the farms and at the mill, we have only had 2 cases of COVID-19 among a lot of people that I told you the number before. So I think that the work that my sister Marcela has done, it has been her initiative and her baby to educate the people so that they are safe, has proven to be super effective. We have had to invest a lot of resources too. Our cost of production has elevated as well, because we had to make some adjustments in our conveyor at the end of the process that we have. That part of the process was the part where we had the most risk, because that's where ladies clean out the coffees in this conveyor belt, and they are very close to each other. So we had to cut the number of ladies that worked in that conveyor in half, so that, of course, reduced productivity and elevated our costs. But the results are there. We have only had 2 cases, and they're recovered, and we are hoping it stays that way. We are also like making sure that people, if they have symptoms, we are making sure that they go to the doctor early on, because the earlier you start like getting medicine and getting a treatment for the virus, the more chances that you have that it doesn't become too bad.
What about, Maria, real quickly, what about the impact? You're about ready to be going into harvest season, correct? And a lot of us on the consumer side, or the supplier to the consumer side, are hearing and have been experiencing supply chain issues where, just simply put, in the United States and elsewhere, many restaurants and coffee shops aren't going to survive this and aren't going to make it through the year, and therefore the business will be down, and therefore the demand for that business. So what impact has that had on the demand for your overall coffee, and maybe and your ability to meet that demand, but then also the price? How has that affected everything?
I think the pandemic has affected everybody, and we are not the exception. We had some contracts that were canceled early on in the year, and I think that this crisis has forced us to reinvent ourselves and to find different ways of doing things. And we see this as something that we have to navigate, and that we have to make like a plan and be proactive in order to subsist the pandemic. Because not only restaurants run the risk of not subsisting, but everybody does if we don't stop and think, okay, what are we going to do from now to the future? I was having a conversation with my dad yesterday exactly about that, and how the way that consumers are going to behave is going to change after the pandemic. There's going to be a lot of change. And as a company, we have to adapt to that change. We have to be able to create products that meet the demand that our clients are going to have. We cannot just like stay there with our arms crossed and saying, okay, this is what we have, this is what it is, and if you want it, fine. If not, because so many people depend on the work that we do that we cannot, we don't have the, like, we cannot just do that. We have to be creative. We have to find new ways to be competitive, and new ways to support each other with us and our clients. As I told you before, the relationships that we have built throughout time are our biggest treasure. And I think that, along with the people that work at Café Pacas that are super committed, super passionate about what they do, they're 100 or 110% on board and working super hard to be able to deliver. We're going to get through it, and I think we're going to get through it stronger than how we were before.
Thank you. That's helpful perspective. I think it's good for a lot of us to think about the suppliers and everything. Right now, we're in the middle of wildfires, and our entire city is shut down, and the cafe has been closed for the last 5 days. And one of the things that we're thinking about is, maybe not enough people are thinking about, is the impact that has on producers. And anytime there's a catastrophic event and people can't harvest their crop or get paid enough for their crop, which is happening right now, their entire crops are wiped out by the fires or the smoke or the shutdown of restaurants, so they can't know where to sell it. And that's been going on for a while. So that's helpful perspective. I want to also shift gears again and also tell everybody that James is helping us James and Niall are helping us navigate questions. So now would be the time, if you have any big questions you wanted to ask Maria, Nolan, or Mike, start chiming those in, and we'll do our best to answer them. But one question I have for this crew, and I'd like each of you to answer, is starting with Maria, in just a couple sentences, what's one thing that you would want people to know and think about for the future of coffee and coffee production for the year ahead? There's so many changes that have happened in the world, and all of us drink coffee, but what's one thing you would want people to know or think about in the year ahead, the end of 2020 and into 2021?
In my opinion, the one thing that I would want people to think when they think about coffee is the importance that how important coffee is to the planet. How many lives depend on coffee? How many hands have to touch each and every single cafeteri for you to be able to enjoy a beautiful cup of coffee every morning? And how many lives depend on that? And not only people's lives, but also the environment. How many coffee in El Salvador and in our farms, coffee is like a forest. It creates oxygen, it captures water, it is home for many animal species. And I think that with COVID-19, we have, as human beings, this has been like an eye-opener for us to see how relevant nature is, and how by consuming and paying fair prices for this crop, you are directly contributing to the well-being of the planet and of the people.
And that's really well said, Maria. I think I would echo those words. And I think it's really, COVID-19, the wildfires in Australia, the wildfires we're seeing in California and Oregon, the state of the planet itself, and now really us all taking some time to stop and to reassess what matters and what we want to actually bring forward into the future, because there's clearly a lot of things that we need to leave behind or change the way that we've done things. And I really see coffee as a vehicle like that too, because it is something that we really should value. And what is it worth, and putting a price on it. And I think it's something that can be very easily brushed as just a cup of coffee and it's just my pick-me-up, but it can really be so much more. It can be so complex. Doesn't mean it has to be every day, but just like you might order a really nice bottle of wine or a nice cigar, or treat yourself to a nice loaf of bread, the expensive cheese every now and then. I think we can really celebrate just how unique and special coffee can be, its characteristic, its provenance, its terroir, and really hold it on more of a pedestal than just a commodity thing that we deserve at a certain price. We really, as Maria said, there's so many hands that touch it before it actually gets to us. There's so much work involved in it. And things are even more challenging. There's the costs are going up. So what better time than ever in the next year to really pay what it's worth and stop being fussy about it. We've been so fortunate in the last 20 years to be getting it at such a great price. And the quality, without a doubt, like Maria said, in the last 13 years, the quality has just gone up and up and up, and that's led to incredible discoveries like Bernardina, Geisha even itself. It's really opened up what is possible for coffee. So I would encourage everyone out there to explore it, play around with it, celebrate it, enjoy it, and don't be shy to pay for it.
Agreed. I think it's a very mindful process, like what Nolan said. It's when you make your brew in the morning, you really can just sort of stop and think about how many hands have touched this product. Seeing it from the farming level, covering it in a lab, it's quite a journey that this coffee does go on. It is a beautiful product. Everyone in coffee is passionate. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a consumer, a coffee buyer, a farm manager, if you own an entity, everyone shares that passion for coffee, which is a beautiful thing. And we do need to celebrate it. We do need to put a stamp on what it is worth. It touches so many hands. It's a incredibly complicated supply chain that flows through. But if we can kind of stop every morning and just sort of wake up with a smile and have that first sip, which calms the soul, I think that's something that we need to be practicing every morning for sure.
Well said. Any questions, James, that you see that have come? There's a lot of questions about how to get their hands on Bernardina. So, and we'll come back to that. That's a good, real quick, just to answer the question. So these 5 trees, and last year we did 3 different processes of those 5 trees. This year we did a couple different processes of the Bernardina coffee. We just released this coffee on pre-sale, meaning we just put it out there to see how many people would want to get it before we even roasted it in Australia and in the US. And last I checked, we've all but sold out of the washed process. Maybe there's, both here and in Australia, which is funny because Australians seem to be a little down on washed coffee compared to natural sometimes. But the natural, we have more of that coffee, and we'll be officially releasing that coffee on Monday for sale, and people can get their hands on it. And it's
So good.
And we encourage you guys to do so. It's also going to be available by the cup in our cafes that are still open despite the pandemic and are doing a to-go format. But we have found a way to do really special coffee even during this. We're selling coffee for $8, $12, $15 a cup, even out of a takeaway window. So you can get your hands on Bernardina a few different ways starting on Monday. But one of the things that Nolan pointed out that's probably worth talking about is just, the honey process and what you see happening next with the Bernardina. You've started to propagate it beside the 5 trees. And where does this go now that you have something that, in our eyes, rivals geisha? It's a little bit like the Wush Wush varietal that's also out there. We're starting to see it. What are your hopes and dreams for the Bernardina coffee?
Well, what we have done, Matt, is that we have planted Bernardina in 5 different farms at different altitudes, because since we're very curious and we are very innovative, we need to know how this coffee variety behaves at different environments. Okay, so that's what we've done. We plan to increase the production of Bernardina, but not like exaggerately a lot of Bernardina. We have also, we're very grateful because this coffee won 3rd place in Cup of Excellence in 2018. And it was not the Bernardina that Nolan has, but one of the Bernardina trees that we planted ourselves. So that was like, made us really proud because we planted those trees and it won 3rd place, and it got the 2nd best price in the auction. So it was really good result.
And that was a honey process version of Bernardina.
Honey process, exactly, yes. So
what you're telling us is that you think that honey is the way to go in the future versus all these other processes. Yeah, no?
I not necessarily.
That's for all the coffee geeks out there, by the way. So yeah.
I think that for us the best strategy is to have a little bit of everything, to be able to offer to our clients a little bit of everything, so that they can decide and they can get to choose. When they visit us, they get to cup a big variety of coffees, different processes, different farms, different varieties. So I believe that is the way to go, because not necessarily what people in America like is what people in Asia like. So having that options for your clients is what we try to do. And
I think it also speaks, Maria, to just how good your honey process is. I think that is something you guys truly mastered overall, and a lot of the coffees that we have bought from El Salvador from you over the years have been incredible honey processed coffees. And
what is, real quick, just nutshell, what is honey and what does it mean to master honey process? Because if somebody's watching this, they're like, what are they talking about? Like, what is that?
It's a little tricky to explain. Maria, have you got an explanation for honey that you'd like to share?
Yeah, the explanation is quite simple. The honey process, after you pick the cherries, you remove the pulp from the parchment, and then the parchment is dried with all the mucilage, which is like a honey, which is the honey of the fruit, stuck to the parchment. Okay, so the tricky part is that mucilage is super sticky, so it's very easy to ruin the coffee. because it gets stuck and it can get over fermented, or it can get damaged really quickly, really easily. So it's very important to master that process. You have to move constantly the parchment. You have to measure the humidity several times to know exactly when it is ready to get out of the patio. And that mucilage provides very honey-like characteristics to the coffee because it's very sweet, and basically that's it. But it sounds easy and it sounds simple, but when you're out there in the patio and you're looking at balls of parchment stuck together and you get nervous, that's hard.
There's a lot of bad honey processed coffee out there, the good ones. A couple of the questions have come related. I think increasing processing or increasing production of Bernardina, what does that mean? So we only had the 5 trees to begin with, but then you assuming you plant a nursery, and then after a few years you have more of it, and then you put it in the field. And how does that work?
Well, in coffee, Matt, everything takes a long time. You have to be very patient because it's not like other industries where you can change from one year to another. You can change, so you have to plan towards the future. You have to make good plans, and you have to have a good vision of where you want to go, because it's not easy to change your mind and say I'm going to take out these trees and put other trees. Coffee trees, they take 4 years before they start producing a decent amount of coffee. So it's like a marriage. Once you're in it, you have to be sure you're in it, So right now with Bernardina, the original 5 trees were the ones we discovered first. But then we discovered more. So in total, we have 13 old trees of the original Bernardina, of the coffee that Nolan and Mike buy for Proud Mary. Then from those original trees, we made nursery many years ago. And now that nursery has been planted in 5 different farms at different altitudes. And now we're getting harvest from those coffees that were planted by us, by ourselves. So,
and do you see the Bernardina variety eventually, like Geisha, starting to find its way to other farms? And what does that look like? Do you want it to go further in the world, or
what we want to do with it is that we want to understand it first really well. Okay, so we're working together with a scientist. He's an expert in plants, in botanical, and with him we are developing like a profile of the Bernardina tree, what its nutrition requirements are, how it adapts to different soils, to different climates, what its production is it susceptible to different diseases, what diseases are those. So we are right now in that phase where we are learning about this varietal. For example, when we planted the seeds that we got from the first Bernardina trees, we got 2 streaks of Bernardina. Okay, so coffee is a living thing. It's a living product. So there's a lot to be understood. There's a lot of mystery in it that we still have to discover. Yep. And well, to answer your question, I think that eventually it will spread like the Pacas variety did. It's something inevitable, I think, and hopefully the quality of the variety is preserved. That is something that is super important.
Very helpful. We definitely have some coffee nerds on here, or enthusiasts, if you will. One of them is one of our old friends and a former employee who wants to know, how do you know when an anaerobic process will yield good results with certain beans? So I guess that's for everybody on here. How do you know when an anaerobic is going to be good?
I mean, that's a reasonably difficult question to answer. I think, like Maria said, there's definitely some varietals that seem to really lean into certain processes really well and work great. But I really think it's still early days understanding getting control over the anaerobic process. Like Mike was kind of explaining, the science side of it is really crucial. And I think to me, it's more that. It's more getting control than it is just selecting the right beans themselves. I think there's someone else is also asking, what factors do you consider when deciding how many hours to keep the coffee in the tanks for anaerobic fermentation? And I think that is kind of interesting, because the things that I kind of come to mind, and Mike and Maria, I'm sure you've got thoughts, but to me, whether you leave the skin on, whether you remove the skin, is going to make a big impact on how quickly that's going to ferment. The different bacteria that's present, whether you are going to wash the cherries before they go to the tanks, or you're going to leave the bacteria that's already present on them. Are you going to use something to start that process and make it quicker? And they're the kind of things that people are thinking about. And then also, how far do you want to push it? And Mike, one of the things that we often talked about was temperature. What's the temperature doing, and paying close attention to what it's doing, because it will rise, and kind of following those signs a bit. But any thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's so many which ways you can take this, like what is deemed to be successful. Sometimes it's more about the intensity of the profile that you're looking for. We have sort of experimented with, obviously, temperature. So obviously a high temperature at a shorter time can still yield some wild results, whether that's high acidity and greater sweetness in the cup. But I feel like that's the beauty of the process as well, that you can sort of guide it down multiple paths, or you can sort of choose to highlight certain characteristics of the coffee. I guess for us, we're sometimes trying to bring out more fruit notes. So therefore, we're more leaning on hours of fermentation in that anaerobic state, and that's in a whole cherry state too. So usually whole cherry fermentation for a longer time is what we're sort of leaning on, and we find we get more fruity characteristics that way.
That's good. Well, we're starting to get a little bit short on time, so I'm going to do another softball question to close us out. So what are you most hopeful about for the future of the coffee industry in the years ahead? And maybe I'll start with Nolan. We'll start with you. What are you most hopeful about?
For me, I'm most hopeful for the coffee industry, just for general consumers out there in the world, to really lean into exploring what coffee can be and celebrate it, to really treat it as something special, because it is really such an amazing gift. When you look at, again, how many hands are involved, the amount of work at the producer side, how easily things can be ruined in that production, the health of the plant, the planet itself, and then when it comes to shipping, it's very vulnerable to get it to our hands in a good state, and then for us to really take care of the roasting process, analyze it on the cupping table, the storage, the packaging, the extraction, to finally have that cup and have this incredible cup of coffee. It's such a magical thing that we really should not take for granted. It's so beautiful. So just seeing people really celebrate it like you would celebrate an incredible bottle of wine, that gets me excited.
What about you guys, gals, folks?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that people become a little bit more inquisitive for sure. Like, I love when people challenge or ask questions about the stories behind the cup. I think that's the best thing about coffee, is there are amazing stories and families and people. The story of Bernardina is probably one of the best stories out there. It's such a beautiful, romantic story as well. But there's multiple coffees out there that exist with a similar sort of premise as well. So I'd love to see customers sort of delve in there, ask baristas, ask anyone about, tell me a bit more behind this cup of coffee. And that's when you truly do fall in love with that cup.
Maria, what are you hopeful for in the coffee industry?
Well, one of the things that really make me excited about the coffee industry is the opportunity to grow more relationships in coffee, and the opportunity that coffee gives us to be able to share a common language in the whole world. Coffee is something universal. I think everybody everywhere in the world drinks coffee. Maybe not always good quality coffee, but coffee is a big part of the culture of so many people that are very different among each other, but very similar at the same time. And for me, coffee is like the language that we speak together with all these cultures, all these different countries. So that continues learning about different cultures, different people, different needs, different countries that didn't used to drink specialty coffee, but once they start, they want to know more. They want to come visit. They want to ask so many questions. So that spark of interest is a big driver in my case, because I see there that coffee is something that is truly important, and I feel that as producers and as roasters, we have a big responsibility to continue in this journey that we are.
Very good. Well, we'll close with a maybe a quick opportunity to have a story. So many of you have seen, we have, maybe Nolan, you can show us your T-shirt. We do have these for sale and whatever. We're not here to promote the coffee itself for sale, but to tell the story. But this artwork is really fun and interesting. But maybe Maria, who made this? Where did this come from? Where did this? We were hoping he could be on the call today, but where did this come from? What's the story with this?
Yeah, that's actually a design from a local artist in El Salvador. He's super talented, and his name is Granadino. And I believe my brother Alfredo introduced him to Mike, and they had a chat about designing the packaging for Bernardina, and I think he nailed it. The packaging is absolutely beautiful, and it represents what's inside. So we are super proud that a Salvadorian artist is collaborating to create and to bring forward this wonderful product that Proud Mary is presenting to the customers.
Very cool. Well, we hope, for selfish reasons and beyond, we hope everybody gets a chance to try this coffee. It truly is world class and what we call mind blowing, and we call it deluxe, but I think this is sort of like super deluxe in terms of not only like how it tastes, but what you'll experience, and we hope you get a chance to check it out. And if not, look for Bernardina, not just in the Proud Mary rotation, but also in the future, maybe among other farms and maybe also other roasters and so on. So anything else anybody wanted to add in closing?
Just great to see you, Maria, as always, and really nice to have a chat. And I'm really thankful that technology like this can really bring us all together. And Mike over in Melbourne, Maria in El Salvador, it's really nice that we can kind of like hang out and have a conversation, because I feel like Mike said, something hits a chord hard when you think about the stories behind these products, and just to connect like this is really what makes it special. I know Maria, when we first moved to Portland, and we got the roaster on the floor, and I had some coffee that we bought spot, and I started trying to dial in the roaster, and it was challenging. And then some of your coffees showed up from El Salvador, and it was the first time in Portland that we had coffee from someone that we were connected to. And immediately the results just changed. I found myself really tuned in and really kind of speaking to the coffee and the roaster itself. And it meant so much to me to kind of just try and get it right. And I think that is the job, is like to kind of connect these dots, to really help people understand where things come from and why they're so special. And when you can speak to a real story and the real people behind these products, it just makes it so much more magical again.
Agreed. I think it's been it's an amazing relationship that we all have together. Being able to work with an amazing organisation that is Proud Mary, and obviously travel over to Cafe Pacas to constantly achieve and push these boundaries and create and curate these amazing coffees. it means the world to us. So we just look forward to keep doing this year in, year out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. It was really nice seeing you. I'm glad to know that you're okay. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about the topic that we most like and we're most passionate about, which is coffee. It's always so enjoyable to talk about it with you, and I think that it's even more special because we share a lot of history. We've been working together for so many years. We have a lot of stories, not only the Bernardina stories, but there's a lot of stories between Café Pacas and Proud Mary that have happened throughout the last years. And I'm sure that moving forward, there will be more stories to tell and more memories to have. So thank you. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you,
And
Maria.
just to let you guys know, it isn't all extremely expensive, fancy stuff. Maria does a little bit of everything. So we also have what we call our daily driver. This is a good example of Café Pacas at scale and producing high quality coffee that's available almost year round. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you everyone out there for watching and listening and taking time out of your busy Thursday or Friday. For those of you where it is Friday, have a great weekend. And the rest of us, goodbye and good luck and be
Thank you,
safe.
guys.
Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
See ya.